For 6 weeks, I've been stealing a man's voice without him knowing a single word belonged to me. Every Saturday, in the same cafe corner, I watched him. I pieced together his world from the silent shapes his lips made, a puzzle where I only ever found 30% of the pieces. Tomorrow, I'm going to tell him everything, and it might cost me the only real conversation I've had in years. My name is Ilara Vance, and I am deaf. The man is Leo, a single father who comes here every week with his little girl. For over a month, I've built an entire fantasy from the fragments of their silent conversations, knowing the one rule of this invisible game. If he finds out I've been listening, the fantasy shatters. But today, I'm going to break that rule, because what started as a lonely woman's distraction has become something I can't walk away from. Even if it means facing a rejection I've spent my entire life trying to avoid. It began like most obsessions do, with a simple routine. Every Saturday morning at 9, I take the same window seat at the grind, order a black coffee, and open a book I never really read. For 2 hours, the world is a silent film. The clatter of cups, the hiss of the steamer, the murmur of 100 conversations, all of it exists only as vibration through the table. My world is built from what I can see. And one Saturday, 8 weeks ago, I saw them. A man and a little girl slid into the booth across from mine. He was in his early 30s, with the kind of tired eyes that still knew how to laugh. She was maybe 5 or 6, a whirlwind of dark curls and animated hands. He helped her out of a small pink jacket with a patience that felt like a physical ache to watch. They had a ritual: pancakes for her, scrambled eggs for him, and a debate over chocolate milk that always ended the same way. I didn't mean to start reading his lips. It's a skill born from necessity, not choice. I lost most of my hearing after a meningitis infection at 14. Lip reading became my bridge to a world that had suddenly gone quiet, but it's a flawed, exhausting bridge. You think it's about watching mouths move. It's a desperate calculus of context, facial expression, and guesswork. Only about 30 to 40% of English sounds are even visible on the lips. The rest is faith. So that first day, I just caught fragments. School, project, proud of you. His voice, or my imagined version of it, was warm and low. The girl's name was Mia. Her laughter was silent but whole, shaking her small frame. I watched him watch her, and a loneliness I'd carefully managed cracked open. The next Saturday, I was there earlier, same seat, and so were they. It became my secret. While the hearing world navigated by sound, I navigated by Leo. That was his name. I learned it 2 weeks in when a waiter called it out for their order. Leo, Mia, they were my weekly cereal. I pieced together his life from splinters of conversation. He was an architect. His ex-wife, Mia's mom, had moved to the city for a new job. He had Mia every weekend. He was struggling to explain time zones to her. He was terrible at French braids. I learned the topography of his face. The way his left eyebrow quirked up when Mia said something outrageous. The faint lines at the corners of his eyes that appeared when he truly smiled, which was often with her. I saw the other looks too. The fleeting shadow when Mia asked a question about her mom. The quiet exhaustion as he calculated the hours before he had to return her. I was building a person from silence. And without a single word exchanged, I was falling for the man I was building. But here's the brutal truth about lip reading in a crowded place. It's isolating. If more than one person speaks, the system collapses. I could never join a table, never be part of a group banter. In the dating world, that anxiety is paralyzing. A recent survey found 1 in 6 people admit they'd feel uncomfortable dating someone who uses sign language. You learn to see the hesitation in people's eyes, the moment the novelty wears off and the effort sets in. I'd been on those dates. The shouted conversations, the missed jokes, the eventual ghosting. My heart had calluses. So Leo was safe. He was a fantasy that asked nothing of me but my attention. A one-way connection where I couldn't be rejected because I didn't exist to him. I was just the woman in the window seat, always with a book. Then 4 weeks ago, the story changed. Mia was coloring furiously when Leo's phone lit up on the table. His face, usually so open with her, closed down. His lips tightened. He read the message, his jaw working. I caught the words. Not all of them, but enough. Change custody, moving summer. He put the phone down and looked at Mia with an expression of pure, gut-wrenching fear. It lasted only a second before he smoothed it into a smile, but I saw it. The foundation of his carefully built weekend world was shaking. He lied to her then, my lip reading certain. Nothing, bug, just work stuff. That was the moment the fantasy curdled. It wasn't just a charming story anymore. It was real. His pain was real. And my silent, stolen intimacy with it felt suddenly like a violation. The following Saturday, he was alone. No Mia. He sat at their usual booth, staring into a coffee. The vibrant man I'd constructed was gone, replaced by someone hollowed out. He was there for an hour. I watched the fight in his shoulders slowly drain away. He left without finishing his drink. A terrifying thought, clear and urgent, broke through my careful observer's walls. He is as alone as I am. The fantasy wasn't enough anymore. The one-way mirror I'd been hiding behind felt like a prison. But what was the alternative? Walk over and what? I couldn't speak to him. My own voice, unused and unreliable to my own ears, felt like a risk. Writing a note felt juvenile, terrifying. Yet the pull was magnetic. The research says successful deaf-hearing relationships aren't about the hearing person doing all the work. They're deaf-centered, built on shared responsibility, on meeting in the middle. But how do you even begin that conversation when you've started it with a lie of omission? When you already know the shape of his grief before you know the sound of his hello? I decided on a compromise, a test. The next week I would change my seat. I would sit closer. If he noticed me, really noticed the woman, not the scenery, then maybe I could find a way in. Saturday came. My heart was a drum against my ribs. I didn't take my window seat. I took the small table right next to the waitress station, one booth away from his. He came in with Mia. The relief that washed over me at seeing her was dizzying. Her presence was a piece of his world restored. They ordered. He was quieter today. I saw him rub his temples. A headache. Mia chattered and he nodded, but his eyes were distant. My plan to be noticed felt absurd, monstrous. He was in pain. This wasn't a romance novel. And then it happened. Mia, reaching for her crayon, knocked her full glass of chocolate milk. It arced through the air, a brown tidal wave, and crashed directly onto my table, soaking my book, my bag, my lap. The cold shock was instantaneous. I jumped up. The cafe's silent chaos erupted around me, people turning, mouths forming perfect O's of surprise. My face burned. Leo was already there, a wad of napkins in his hand. "Oh my God, I am so sorry," he said, his lips moving with clear, horrified apology. Mia peered out from behind him, her own face crumpling. He was looking at me, really looking. His eyes, that warm brown I knew so well, were wide with concern. He held out the napkins, gesturing to the mess. This was it, the moment of contact. And I froze. Every rehearsed smile, every imagined gesture evaporated. The weight of everything I knew about him and everything he didn't know about me crashed down. I could only stare, mute, the chocolate milk dripping from my fingertips. His expression shifted from concern to confusion. He tried again, speaking slower as if I hadn't understood. "Are you okay?" I saw the moment the second worse assumption dawned on him. The moment he looked at my face, saw my panic, my silence, and didn't see hearing aids. His eyes flickered with something new, awkwardness, the fear of having offended. The chasm between us, which I had secretly bridged for weeks, was now visible, wide, and filled with spilled chocolate milk. I did the only thing I could think of. I forced a tight, terrible smile, took the napkins, and nodded quickly. I turned and fled to the bathroom, leaving him standing there, holding the rest of the napkins. The connection I'd craved, now a messy, embarrassing failure. I stayed in the bathroom stall until my hands stopped shaking. The fantasy was over. It had died in the most pathetic way possible. I'd had my chance at a real moment and I'd run from it. I cleaned up as best I could, and when I finally emerged, their booth was empty. They were gone. For the first time in 8 weeks, I didn't want to be at the grind. I gathered my soggy things, the stain on my pants a permanent mark of my cowardice, and walked out into the bright, silent street. It was over. But the human heart is a stubborn organ. It doesn't accept endings so easily. All week, the image of his confused, concerned face haunted me. Not the perfect, smiling Leo of my fantasies, but the real, flustered, kind man who tried to help a stranger. The research I'd done for my own life echoed in my head. Relationships that work are built on communication, not perfection, on showing up, not hiding. I had hidden for years. I was still hiding, even in my own daring fantasy. The next Saturday, I woke up with a resolve so sharp it hurt. I would go back. I would sit in my usual seat, and I would be prepared. I spent the morning practicing in the mirror, the words feeling strange on my tongue. I wrote and rewrote a simple note on a piece of cardstock until the letters were perfect. This time I wouldn't just steal his voice, I would offer mine. When I walked into the grind, my hands were ice cold. I looked toward the booth. It was empty. A crushing disappointment settled in my chest. Of course. After last week's disaster, maybe he'd found a new place. Maybe the custody battle had taken me away. I almost turned around, but my routine held. I went to my window seat, ordered my coffee, and set the folded note on the table beside me. I stared at the empty booth, mourning a loss that had never really been mine. And then the door chimed. He walked in alone again, no Mia. He looked exhausted, thinner. He went straight to the booth and slid in, not even looking up. He just sat there, hands wrapped around his head. The cliffhanger wasn't in a dramatic event. It was in the absolute stillness of his defeat, and in the folded note on my table, containing a confession and a question I now had no idea how to deliver. The fantasy was dead, but the man was right there, hurting. And I had a choice: stay safe in my silent world or cross the cafe and shatter it forever. I didn't think. Thinking would have stopped me. I picked up the note, my coffee, and I walked across the cafe. The distance was maybe 20 feet. It felt like crossing a canyon on a frayed rope. The vibrations of my own footsteps were the only sound. He didn't look up until my shadow fell across his table. His eyes, when they met mine, were red-rimmed and distant. Then recognition flickered, the chocolate milk woman, the one who'd fled. Confusion, a hint of defensive wariness. He started to form a word, an apology perhaps. I placed the note on the table between us, my hand trembling. Then I pointed to myself, brought my finger to my ear, and shook my head. The universal, clumsy sign for I am deaf. His eyes widened. The pieces clicked. My silence last week wasn't rudeness or shock. It was inability. I gestured to the note, then to him. Please read. I forced myself to take a small step back, giving him space. This was his to accept or refuse. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I could feel it in my throat. He looked from me to the folded card stock. He hesitated, then picked it up. He opened it. I had written in clear, neat print. Hi, my name is Elora. I am deaf. First, I am so sorry about last Saturday, the mess, and then my disappearing act. I was embarrassed and flustered, not upset. Thank you for your kindness. I see you here often with your daughter. She seems wonderful. You seem like a great dad. Today you seem sad. I don't want to intrude, but if you would like silent company, my coffee is getting cold at my table. No pressure at all, just an offer. E. I watched his face as he read. It was the strangest sensation, knowing the exact words he was seeing but having no access to his thoughts. His expression moved through stages. Surprise, rereading, a softening around his mouth. He looked up at me, his eyes searching mine now with a new, intense curiosity. He held up one finger asterisk, wait asterisk, and pulled out a pen from his jacket. He wrote on the back of my note, his hand moving quickly. He slid it back across the table to me. Elara, I'm Leo. The apology is all mine. Mia is a force of nature, sometimes a destructive one. You didn't deserve that, and you certainly don't have to sit alone. Please join me, but only if you want to." The relief was so potent my knees felt weak. I nodded, a real smile breaking through my nervousness for the first time. I sat down in the booth across from him, setting my coffee down. The dynamic was instantly, profoundly different. I was no longer a ghost watching a play. I was a character on stage without a script. He wrote again. "Can I ask the best way to talk? I don't know sign language, I'm sorry." I took the pen. "Writing is perfect, or I can lip read a little, but it's hard. No need to be sorry, this is fine." I underlined fine twice. He read it and nodded, a look of concentration on his face. Then he picked up his phone, typed something, and showed me the screen. It was a notes app, blank except for a heading, "Conversation with Alara." He pointed at it, then at me, a question in his eyes. My throat tightened. It was such a simple, considerate solution. He was trying, not with pity but with practicality. I nodded eagerly. He typed, his thumbs flying. "So, you come here every Saturday too?" It wasn't a question. He'd noticed me. The realization sent a thrill through me. I took the phone and typed back. "I do. The window seat is my office. I'm a freelance graphic designer. The book is usually a prop." He smiled when he read that, a genuine crinkly-eyed smile that reached those tired eyes. "What kind of design?" he typed. And just like that, we were talking, or typing. The flow was stilted, paused by the passing of the phone, but it was real. We covered the basics. My work, his architecture, how long I'd been in the city. He asked thoughtful questions, waiting patiently as I composed my answers. He didn't shout. He didn't exaggerate his mouth movements. He just communicated. Then he typed, "Can I ask about your hearing? Only if you're comfortable. Was it always?" I took a breath. This was the intimacy cliff. I could give the safe medical answer, or I could be honest. I chose honesty. Meningitis at 14. Lost most of it over a few terrible weeks. It was a long time ago. He read it and his face did something remarkable. It didn't contort with pity. It settled into understanding. He typed, "That must have been incredibly hard, to have the world change like that as a teenager." He got it. He didn't say, "I'm sorry," which I'd grown to hate. He acknowledged the difficulty. It was a subtle, profound difference. "It was," I typed. "It is, but you adapt, you find new ways to listen." I almost deleted that last sentence. It felt too revealing. He read it and looked up at me, holding my gaze for a long moment. He nodded slowly, as if I'd said something wise. Then he typed, "New ways to listen. I like that." The conversation turned to him. I asked, "Is Mia okay? You're usually together." I was venturing onto dangerous ground, using knowledge I shouldn't officially have. His expression clouded. He typed for a longer time. "Her mom got a big promotion in Seattle. She wants to move and she wants Mia with her. We're in the middle of figuring it out. It's messy. Today was a hard meeting with lawyers." The confirmation of what I'd lip-read weeks ago was a punch to the gut. Seeing the words made it realer than my silent deduction ever could. His fear, his defeat, it was all about possibly losing his daughter. "I am so sorry, Leo," I typed, the words feeling utterly inadequate. "That is an impossible situation." He gave a small, grateful shrug. "Thanks, yeah." He changed the subject. "So, lip reading, how does that work? It seems like magic." And so I explained. I told him about the 30% of sounds visible on the lips, about the mental gymnastics of context clues, about how exhausting it is, how it fails utterly in groups or with mustaches. He listened, rapt, asking smart follow-up questions on his phone. He was fascinated, not awkward. It was the first time I'd ever explained my reality to someone who seemed genuinely interested in the mechanics, not just the tragedy. An hour slipped by. The waitress refilled his coffee, giving us a curious look. We'd created a little bubble of shared silence and glowing text. The outside world melted away. Then he typed a question that stopped my heart. "Last week, before the milk explosion, you were watching us. weren't you?" The blood drained from my face. He'd seen me. Not just last week, but before. The observer was observed. My secret was partially out. I had a choice: lie and preserve the fantasy, or tell a deeper truth and risk everything. My fingers were cold as I typed. Yes, I'm a people watcher. It's part of the job, part of the condition. You learn to read stories in faces. Yours and Mia's, it was a good story. It was an evasion wrapped in a truth. He read it, his face unreadable. He typed, "And what did you read?" The canyon was opening beneath me again. I typed slowly, choosing each word as if it were my last. I read a father who loves his daughter more than anything. I read a man doing his best. I read loneliness sometimes, the kind I recognize. I hit send and pushed the phone back, unable to look at him. The silence stretched. I stared at my hands. When I finally glanced up, he was staring at the phone, his jaw tight. When he looked at me, his eyes were glistening. He didn't type. He just gave one slow, heavy nod, an acknowledgement, a connection. He cleared his throat, blinking rapidly, and typed, "Your read is pretty accurate." Then he added, "Thank you for seeing that. Most people don't." In that moment, the one-way mirror shattered completely. We were two people, seeing each other clearly, through our own unique forms of broken glass. He checked his watch and his face fell. "I have to go, another meeting," he typed. This was really nice, Alara, thank you." The panic of it ending rose in me. I nodded, trying to look composed. He gathered his things, then hesitated. He picked up the phone, typed one last message, and showed it to me before he left. "Next Saturday, same time, I'll bring better conversation and no chocolate milk." I laughed, a real soundless burst of air that made my shoulders shake. I nodded vigorously. He smiled, that warm, crinkly-eyed smile, pocketed his phone, and with a small wave he was gone. I sat in the booth, surrounded by the silent cafe, trembling. The note, now smudged with both our writings, lay on the table. It had worked. Against all odds, it had worked. We had a connection, a fragile, typed, beautiful connection. The following week was agony. Every day was a countdown to Saturday. I replayed every typed line in my head. I worried I'd been too revealing, too intense. I practiced things I might say. I didn't allow myself to lip-read him from afar anymore. That felt like a betrayal of the real thing we'd started. Saturday arrived. I was a knot of nerves. I took my window seat, not wanting to presume. At 9:05 he walked in, alone again, but he looked different, less defeated. He scanned the cafe, found me, and a smile spread across his face. A direct, intentional smile for me. He walked straight to my table. He didn't sit in the booth across. He pulled out the chair at my small table and sat down beside me, close enough that I could see his face clearly. He smelled like soap and fresh air. He pulled out his phone, opened the Notes app, and typed, "Hi, is this seat taken?" I typed back, my fingers clumsy, "It is now." And so it continued, for 5 more Saturdays, our silent digital dates. We graduated from the Notes app to a shared document on his tablet, which was easier. We talked about everything and nothing. My failed dating disasters, his divorce, the slow unraveling he still didn't fully understand, my love of old movies with expressive faces, his passion for designing public libraries. We discovered a shared hatred of cilantro and a love for terrible puns. He asked me one week to teach him a sign, just one. I taught him "thank you." He practiced it meticulously, his hands clumsy but his intention perfect. He used it every time I passed him the tablet. It became our ritual. I was falling hard and fast for the real man, not the fantasy. And the terrifying, wonderful part was that it seemed mutual. He was leaning in, literally and figuratively. He remembered tiny details I'd typed weeks before. He'd follow up. "How did that client presentation go? Did you try that sushi place you mentioned?" But the ghost of my original secret lingered. I still hadn't confessed the extent of my prior knowledge. I hadn't told him I knew about the custody fears before he did, that I'd seen his private panic. That lie of omission grew heavier each week. It felt like a wall between the authentic connection we were building and the dishonest way it had begun. And then, on the sixth Saturday, Mia came back. She bounced into the cafe, a burst of energy in a yellow raincoat. Leo was beaming. He led her over to my table. My stomach dropped. This was the test. The real world, with its complications, was crashing into our quiet, typed bubble. Leo crouched down, speaking directly to Mia, his lips moving clearly. I caught it. This is my friend Alara. She can't hear us, so we have to talk like this. He showed her the tablet. Mia stared at me, then at the tablet with the unabashed curiosity of a child. Then she did something miraculous. She didn't stare at my ears or speak loudly. She just grinned, grabbed the stylus, and wrote in huge, wobbly letters. H-I-E-L-A-R-A, my name is M-I-A, I am 6, do you like P-A-N-C-A-K-E-S? I laughed, tears springing to my eyes. I wrote back, H-I-M-I-A, I love P-A-N-C-A-K-E-S, chocolate chip. And just like that, I was in. The three of us shared breakfast. Mia drew pictures on the tablet for me. Leo translated her faster, chattier thoughts. It was messy and imperfect and the most beautiful morning of my life. I saw him watching us, his expression a mixture of awe and something that looked like love. As we were leaving, Mia hugging me goodbye, a small, fierce squeeze, Leo typed a final message. She adores you. He backspaced. Thank you for today. That night the guilt became unbearable. He was sharing his daughter with me. He was trusting me with his heart. And I was still hiding a fundamental truth about how we met. I knew what the research said. Deaf-centered relationships require radical honesty and shared responsibility. I was failing at the first part. I had to tell him, not just that I'd watched him, but why. That I'd been lonely, that I'd been drawn to the light of his relationship with Mia, that I'd fallen for him through a silent window before I ever knew his name. It would risk everything. He could feel betrayed, spied on, manipulated. The beautiful thing we were building could shatter, but if I didn't tell him, it would always be built on a lie. The fantasy I'd started with would poison the reality I now wanted more than anything. I made a decision. The next Saturday, I would tell him the whole truth. I wrote it out first, a long, careful explanation on my own device so I could fumble it in the moment. I practiced the signs I might use if words failed. I prepared for his anger, his hurt, his withdrawal. Saturday morning dawned gray and rainy. I felt sick with nerves. This was it. I would either lose him or we would begin for real with nothing hidden. I arrived at the grind early. He was already there at our usual table, but he wasn't alone. A woman sat across from him, sleek, professional, beautiful, Mia's mother. I recognized her from the one photo I'd seen on his phone. They were leaning in, talking intently. It didn't look like a fight, it looked intense, collaborative. My heart plummeted. The custody battle, it must be coming to a head. This was his real life, his complicated, messy reality. And I was about to walk in with my confession of secret feelings and hidden observations. It felt grotesque, selfish. I stood frozen just inside the door, the rain dripping from my coat. He looked up and saw me. His expression was unreadable, a mix of surprise, stress, and something else. He said something to the woman, then stood up and started walking toward me. This was the bridge, the moment where everything tipped. He was leaving a meeting with the mother of his child to come talk to me. What I said next would determine whether I stepped into his life or was forever relegated to the margins of it. The note in my pocket, containing my full confession, felt like it was burning a hole through me. He reached me, his eyes searching mine, full of a question I couldn't yet hear. He didn't use the tablet. He took my hand, his touch sending a jolt through me, and pulled me gently into a quiet corner by the coat rack. He pulled out his phone, but instead of typing, he opened a new app, a voice-to-text translator. He held it between us, his face serious. Alara, he said, and the words appeared on the screen in real time, a digital echo of his voice. That's Claire, Mia's mom. We just had a breakthrough, a weird one. I watched the words form, my mind racing. He was letting me hear him in this strange, mediated way. It felt more intimate than typing. I took out my own phone to reply, my thumbs clumsy. "Is everything okay? You don't have to talk to me right now." He shook his head, speaking softly to the phone. "No, I need to. It involves you, indirectly." My blood ran cold. Involves you. The confession note in my pocket turned to lead. I typed me. He ran a hand through his hair. "The move to Seattle, it's off. The promotion fell through. She's staying. But she's met someone, seriously. He lives in the suburbs. She wants to move in with him." The words scrolled by. This was huge. Mia wasn't moving across the country, but the ground was shifting in a new way. I typed, "That's a lot for Mia, for you." He nodded, his eyes intense on the screen, then on me. "It is, but that's not the part that involves you. We were talking about stability, about what's best for Mia." And Claire, she said something I didn't expect. She said, "I see how happy Mia is when she talks about your friend from the cafe, the one who draws with her. That kind of consistency is good for her." I stopped breathing. His ex-wife, the woman I'd seen as a rival for his heart and his daughter's life, had just endorsed me, based on a few drawings on a tablet, based on Mia's happiness. Tears pricked my eyes. I typed, "She said that." "She did, and she's right." He took a deep breath, the microphone picking up the sound. "Alara, these Saturdays, they've been the only thing keeping me sane. You've been incredible. You see me in a way no one has in years, maybe ever." This was it. He was opening a door, and my secret was a landmine on the threshold. I had to tell him. Now, I fumbled for the note in my pocket, my hands shaking, but he was still speaking. "So I told her," I said, "her name is Alara and she's not just a friend." He paused, letting the words hang in the digital space between us. "I'm falling for you, Alara, hard." The world tilted. The confession I'd carried, my burden, was suddenly dwarfed by the magnitude of his. He was laying his heart bare in a crowded cafe, using a robot voice to do it, and I was about to ruin it with my truth. He misread my panic. "I'm sorry, too much. The timing is terrible with all this." I shook my head violently, dropping the note back into my pocket. "Not now. I couldn't detonate this moment." I typed, my vision blurring, "It's not too much. I feel the same. I am falling for you, Leo, so much." When he read that, his whole face transformed. Relief, joy, wonder. He reached out and cupped my face, his thumb brushing my cheek. He didn't need words. The touch said everything. Then he leaned in, his lips forming 3 clear, silent words against the noise of the cafe. "I love you." I didn't need to lip read them. I felt them, and I was a coward. The next month was a beautiful, agonizing paradox. We were officially together. He told his family about me. I told mine about him. We went on real dates, to quiet art museums, to parks where we could walk and type. He bought a book on American Sign Language and practiced in the mirror, surprising me with simple signs. Coffee. Beautiful. More. He introduced me to his friends. It was my nightmare scenario, group settings, but he was my translator. He'd type summaries of conversations, include me. It was clunky, but he tried. I saw the effort, the love in that effort. It was the deaf-centered approach the articles talked about, and it was working. Mia was our bridge. She learned a few signs faster than he did. Our bond deepened. She'd crawl into my lap with a book, letting me feel the vibrations of her voice as she read to me. I felt a sense of belonging, of family I'd thought was lost to me forever. But the lie festered. It became a third person in our relationship. Every time he said, "I can't believe we just met in that cafe," a knife twisted in my gut. Every time Mia said, "Tell me the story of how you and Daddy met," I'd smile and type a sanitized version, dying inside. The research I'd clung to for comfort now tormented me. Successful relationships are built on shared responsibility and radical honesty. I was building a skyscraper on a foundation of sand. The breaking point came from an unexpected direction: Claire. She wanted to meet me, officially, not as Daddy's friend, but as his girlfriend. Leo was nervous but thought it was a good sign. She wants to know who's in her daughter's life, he typed. It's actually really mature of her. We met at a playground. Mia ran off to the swings. Claire was sharp, polished, and watched me with the analytical eyes of a lawyer. We communicated through Leo's tablet, a three-way conversation that felt like a tribunal. She was polite, asked about my work, my family. Then she asked the question I'd been dreading. So, how did you two meet? Leo, been mysteriously vague. Leo tensed beside me. He typed, at the grind, she spilled coffee on me. A protective, charming lie. But Claire's eyes were on me. She asked me. I had to answer. I took the tablet, my fingers hovered. I could repeat his lie, or I could tell a version of the truth. I typed, we kept seeing each other every Saturday. We started talking, or typing, I guess. Claire read it, a faint smile on her lips. The Saturday regular. He mentioned a woman who was always there. He said you were very observant. My heart stopped. He talked about me, before the milk incident. She knew I'd been there, watching. The pieces were in her mind and she was a professional at assembling puzzles. The meeting ended with cordial goodbyes. But as we walked away, Leo typed, she likes you. I can tell. I wasn't so sure. I felt dissected. A week later, the other shoe dropped. Leo came to my apartment, his face ashen. He handed me his phone. On it was an email from Claire's lawyer. Subject: concerns regarding parenting time and new influences. It was legalese, but the gist was clear. Claire was petitioning for a modification of the custody agreement. She argued that Leo's new, serious relationship with a person with a significant communication disability introduced an unstable and unpredictable variable into Mia's care environment. She cited the need for clear, consistent, and immediate verbal communication for child safety and development. She wasn't saying I was a bad person. She was using my deafness and the newness of our relationship as a weapon. The 1 in 6 statistic about discomfort dating a deaf person was now a legal argument against me. Leo was devastated. She's not like this, he kept typing. This is her lawyer talking, this is fear. But the damage was done. The message was clear. My presence in his life was a liability to the thing he cherished most, his time with his daughter. I felt the walls of my world, which had so recently expanded, slam shut. This was the rejection I'd always feared, weaponized. It wasn't about me not being heard. It was about me being seen as a risk. That night, I made the hardest decision of my life. I wrote Leo a letter, not the confession note, but a goodbye. I said I couldn't be the reason he lost Mia, that Claire's concerns, however hurtful, had a kernel of logic. His daughter's stability had to come first, that I loved him too much to be his weakness. I left the letter on his kitchen table the next morning when he was in the shower. Then I blocked his number, deleted our shared document, and disappeared. The guilt was suffocating, but so was the certainty that I'd done the right thing. I was protecting him. I was finally being the selfless one. For 2 weeks, I was a ghost. I didn't go to the grind. I barely left my apartment. The silence I was so accustomed to became a roar of absence. I missed the vibration of his laughter through a table. I missed the glow of the tablet screen in the dark. I missed Mia's hugs. Then on a Tuesday afternoon, my doorbell rang. The camera feed showed Leo standing in the rain, looking hollowed out and furious. He held up a sign to the camera. Open the door. We need to talk. I couldn't. I stood frozen, watching him. He rang again. Then he sat down on my doorstep, right there in the rain, and pulled out his tablet. He started typing, holding it up to the camera every few seconds. I got your letter, it's bullshit. Claire retracted the petition. She was scared. We talked. She met with a child psychologist. The psychologist said exposure to different ways of communicating is beneficial. Mia cries for you at night. I am not losing you to protect her. I am losing her by losing you. You don't get to make this choice for me, for us. Each message was a hammer blow. He fought, he won, and I'd run away. The final message he held up was just 2 words: tell me. Tell him what? I thought he meant why I left, but then he typed again, slower. Claire said something else. She said the way you looked at me that first day she saw us. It wasn't the look of someone who just met me. It was the look of someone who knew me, really knew me. So tell me, Alara, what aren't you saying? The landmine was found. He was standing on it, asking me to detonate it. The secret I'd carried to protect us had nearly destroyed us anyway. There was only one path left, the terrifying, honest one. With trembling hands, I unlocked the door. He stepped inside, dripping rain on my floor, and didn't say a word. He just held out the tablet, his expression a mask of exhausted resolve. The screen was blank except for the cursor, blinking. An invitation, a demand. I led him to the couch. The space between us felt like a chasm. I took the tablet, my hand steadier than I expected. The truth, once I started typing, flowed out like a hemorrhage. There was no elegant way to say it. The first time I saw you, it was 8 Saturdays before the chocolate milk. You were helping Mia with her jacket. I was in my window seat. I saw you and I watched. I typed about the routine, about the loneliness that made his easy warmth magnetic. I explained lip reading not as a parlor trick, but as my survival tool, and how I'd used it to piece together his life, his name, his job, his shared custody. The day I saw the text about Seattle, the fear on his face, how I'd built a fantasy from silent fragments. I knew you were sad long before you told me. I knew you were fighting for Mia. I knew the shape of your loneliness because it matched mine. I fell for you long before we ever typed a word to each other. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to tell you that our beginning was a lie, that I wasn't just a stranger you were kind to. I was a spy. I handed the tablet back, unable to look at him. I braced for the explosion, for the betrayal to register on his face, for him to stand up and leave, for the love I'd seen to curdle into disgust. The silence stretched. I could hear the hum of my refrigerator, feel the weight of his presence. Then, a soft tapping on the tablet. He was typing. I forced myself to look. His response was not what I expected. Okay. Just 1 word, then more, I knew. My head snapped up. He was watching me, his expression not angry but profoundly sad. He typed again. Not the specifics, but I felt it. That first real conversation when you said you'd read my loneliness, it felt too accurate, too deep. It scared me, but I wanted it to be true so badly that I ignored the voice asking how. He took a shaky breath and continued typing. Claire's comment about the way you looked at me, it just confirmed what I already felt in my gut. You had a history with me that I didn't share. I just didn't know what it was. You're not angry. I typed, disbelief making my fingers clumsy. I was, he typed back. On the walk over here I was furious. I felt manipulated, but then you told me why, and it wasn't malicious. It was lonely. It was human. He paused, his eyes searching mine. You fell for me through a window. I fell for you through a screen. Which one of us is more guilty of building a fantasy? The forgiveness in his words was so absolute it was disorienting. I should have told you, I typed, tears finally spilling over. Yes, he agreed simply. You should have, and I should have asked. We both chose the fantasy because the reality was too scary. But Alara, the reality is so much better. He put the tablet down and reached for my hands. He held them, his thumbs tracing circles on my palms. It was a gesture of grounding, of connection that needed no translation. Then he picked the tablet back up. Here is the new truth starting right now. I love you. I love the woman who watched a sad father and his kid and saw a story worth following. I love the woman who was brave enough to walk across a cafe with a note. I love the woman who is teaching my daughter that communication has 1,000 faces. The beginning might be a little weird, but our middle and our end can be whatever we choose to build. Honestly. It was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever said to me. It wasn't a pardon, it was an understanding. It was the deaf-centered, honesty I'd read about, arriving not from a textbook, but from a heart that had chosen to see mine. I typed one last thing. I choose you and Mia, however that looks. He nodded, a tear tracing a path through the stubble on his cheek. Then he did something he'd never done before. He moved his hand slowly, deliberately, forming shapes in the air between us. It was clumsy, unpracticed, but the signs were clear. I love you. He'd been learning, not just words, but my asterisk language. The final wall came down. I reached out and signed back, my hands fluent, graceful, full of a love I no longer had to hide. I love you. We didn't need the tablet anymore, not for that. The aftermath was a recalibration. We had to rebuild our origin story. We told Mia a simplified, truer version. Alara saw us at the cafe and thought we looked like nice people. Then we became friends. Mia, with a child's wisdom, shrugged and said, "That's a good story." Claire, to her credit, apologized. The psychologist's report had shaken her. She admitted her fear had been about losing primacy in Mia's life, not about my deafness. We established a cautious, respectful peace. She even asked me to help design the remodel of her new house. Leo and I attended sign language classes together. He was painfully slow, wonderfully determined. I learned to voice my words more, to let the strange, unused sound of my own speech into our world. We met in the middle, in a space of patience and laughter and miscommunication that we fixed together. A year later, we were back at the grind on a Saturday morning. Our table now. Mia, now 7, was coloring next to Leo. I was sketching on my tablet. The cafe was loud, a symphony I couldn't hear but could feel in the vibrations of the table, the shake of the floor. Leo tapped my arm. He didn't use the tablet. He signed, his movements more confident now. "Remember, 1 year ago here." I smiled and signed back, "The confession." He nodded. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, familiar piece of cardstock. It was the original note I'd given him, worn at the creases, stained with coffee rings. He unfolded it carefully and pointed to the back, to his first written reply, "Please join me." He took my hand. Then he got down on one knee, right there in the middle of the cafe. The world did not go silent for me. It was always silent, but it stilled in a different way. The vibrations of activity softened. People turned. Mia clapped her hands over her mouth, her eyes wide. Leo didn't speak. He didn't type. He signed, each gesture clear and filled with intention. "Alara, you taught me to listen with my eyes, to speak with my hands, to love without fear of the words getting lost. You are my favorite conversation. Will you marry me?" He produced a ring, simple, perfect. And I, a woman who had spent years fearing the inadequacy of her own voice, found that in this moment, no sound was needed. I signed my answer, my hand speaking the clearest truth of my life. "Yes, yes, yes." The cafe erupted in applause I could see but not hear. The clapping hands, the smiling faces, Mia jumping up and down. Leo slid the ring onto my finger and kissed me, and in that kiss I felt the vibration of his joy and mine becoming one frequency. The final surprise came 6 months after the wedding. We were at a family dinner, Leo, me, Mia, Claire, and Claire's new partner. Mia was now 8, a whirlwind of energy and questions. She was telling a story about school, her hands flying as she spoke. And then seamlessly she signed a word, then a sentence. She was talking and signing at the same time, a practice called simultaneous communication. She did it without thinking, a natural blending of both worlds for my benefit. Claire watched, her eyes soft. She looked at me and said, slowly and clearly so I could read her lips, she wants to be an interpreter when she grows up. She says she wants to help people have beautiful conversations like yours. That was the moment I understood the full circle. My deafness, which I had seen as a barrier to love and family, had not just been accommodated. It had become a thread in the fabric of our family, weaving us together in a unique, stronger pattern. It had inspired a little girl's dream. It had taught a man a new language of love. It had given me the courage to finally be seen. Leo squeezed my hand under the table and signed, "Happy," with a smile that held our entire history. I signed back, terrified and happy. It was our old joke, our true state. Because love isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to build something beautiful together, even though you're terrified. It's saying yes to a seat at a table, yes to a conversation you don't know how to have, yes to a future you can't predict. My story began with me stealing a man's voice from across a room. It ended with him giving me his heart in my own language. And in the middle, we built a family where every member, in their own way, had learned to listen with more than just their ears. So, what is the moral of a story that began with a secret and ended with a vow? It's not that love conquers all. It's that love is willing to try. It's that the most profound connections often start in the spaces we assume are empty. The silence between words, the pause in a conversation, the glance from across a room that holds a question too terrifying to voice. For 6 weeks, I lived in a fantasy built on 30% comprehension, on the shattered fragments of sound I could pull from the movement of a stranger's lips. The research says that's the best I could ever hope for. 30 to 40% of speech is visible. The rest is guesswork, context, and hope. I built an entire man, and later, an entire love on that fragile foundation of hope. And maybe that's the point. We're all, in some way, lip-reading each other. We're all piecing together understanding from incomplete information, from what people choose to show us and what we're brave enough to see. We're all navigating a world where perfect communication is a myth and connection is a choice you make anyway. Leo and I didn't find each other despite the silence. We found a new language within it. We built a bridge where before there was only a canyon, and we built it not from grand gestures but from small, consistent acts of patience. A passed tablet, a clumsily formed sign, a decision to listen with more than your ears. The stigma is real, the fear of being too much, the anxiety that your difference is a burden. It lives in the data and in the heart. 1 in 6 people admit they'd be uncomfortable dating someone like me. But the counter to that statistic isn't an argument. It's a story. It's the story of a man who saw not a disability but a person, who saw not a barrier but a different path. Our story is a map for that path. It says, start where you are, with a note, with a look, with the courage to be the one who says, can I share this table? The risk is terrifying. The reward is a new world. Look around you, right now. Who is in your cafe? Who is in your orbit seeming separate content in their own silence? What beautiful, complicated story is unfolding just beyond your reach, waiting for an invitation? The next great love story of your life might not announce itself with a fanfare. It might begin with a quiet observation, a shared smile, a spilled drink. It begins when you decide the view from your window seat is no longer enough. So be brave. Be the one who crosses the room. Be the one who asks the question. Be the one who learns a new way to say, I see you. Because the most extraordinary lives are built from a series of ordinary, courageous yeses. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of a connection waiting to be made or a bridge waiting to be crossed, hit that subscribe button. I share stories like this every week, stories about the quiet courage it takes to build a beautiful, real life. I'll see you in the next one.